69 BC Alexandria, the greatest city in the Mediterranean world. A city of perhaps 500,000 people, a population that makes it larger than Rome at this time. Its streets are laid out in a grid, wide and planned, unlike the winding lanes of older cities. Its harbor is one of the finest in the ancient world, marked by the pharaohs, the great lighthouse that is counted among the 7 wonders of the ancient world. At the center of the city is the royal quarter palaces and gardens on a peninsula. Jutting into the harbor, the library and museum where the greatest scholars of the age work and study, the mausoleum, where Alexander the Great, whose city this is, lies in his golden sarcophagus. Into this world a child is born. Her name is Cleopatra. She is the 7th of that name, and her dynasty history will call her simply Cleopatra. Her family is the Ptolemaic dynasty, founded by Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's generals who took Egypt for himself after Alexander's death. The Ptolemies have ruled Egypt for 250 years by the time Cleopatra is born. They are Macedonian Greeks who rule an Egyptian kingdom for most of those 250 years. They have not bothered to learn Egyptian. They conduct their court in Greek. They worship Greek gods alongside the Egyptian ones. They present themselves to their Egyptian subjects as pharaohs, but among themselves they are a Hellenistic royal family, with all the complexity and violence that implies. The Ptolemaic dynasty is not a peaceful one. It is defined by family violence. Brothers kill brothers, sisters kill sisters, mothers kill sons. The history of the dynasty reads like a catalogue of murder within the family. Cleopatra grows up knowing this. She grows up understanding that survival in her family requires intelligence, political skill, and ruthlessness. Her father is Ptolemy XII. He is not a strong king. He is called Auletes by his subjects, the flute player, a nickname that carries contempt. He survives primarily by accommodating Rome, whose power is expanding steadily into the eastern Mediterranean. He pays enormous sums to Roman politicians, including Julius Caesar and Pompey, to secure Roman recognition of his rule. The money comes from taxes on the Egyptian population. The population resents it. Cleopatra grows up in this court. She watches her father navigate between Roman power and Egyptian resentment. She learns languages. Greek is her first language. She learns Egyptian, the first of her dynasty to do so. She learns several other languages of the region. She studies mathematics, philosophy, and rhetoric. She is educated as a ruler, not as an ornament. Rest now, Alexandria is brilliant tonight. The lighthouse beam sweeps across the dark water. A girl is reading by lamplight. In the palace, she is learning everything she will need. Good night. Good night. '51 BC Ptolemy, the 12th dies. He has ruled Egypt for nearly 30 years, most of them badly. He leaves behind a kingdom that is heavily indebted to Rome and a population that has been taxed beyond endurance to pay for his political survival. What he also leaves is a throne. By the terms of his will, 2 of his children are to rule jointly: Cleopatra, who is 18 years old, and her younger brother, Ptolemy the 13th, who is around 10. Joint rule of this kind is a Ptolemaic tradition rooted in Egyptian custom, which requires a female ruler to have a male co-ruler. At least nominally. In practice, Cleopatra intends to rule alone. She is not without preparation. Her father had involved her in government in his final years. She has seen how the court works, how Roman pressure is managed, how the Egyptian priesthood is kept on side, how the complex bureaucracy of the richest country in the Mediterranean is administered. She is young, but she is not naive. Her first years on the throne are spent trying to establish her authority against opposition from within the court. Her brother's advisors, a group of powerful men who prefer a child king they can manipulate to an adult queen with her own ideas, work to undermine her. They have control of the army. They have access to the boy king. They have time on their side. She reaches out to the Egyptian population in ways her predecessors did not. She appears in Egyptian dress. She participates in Egyptian religious ceremonies. She speaks to her subjects in their own language, the Egyptian priests, who have enormous influence over the population, respond positively. It is a genuine political strategy as much as a cultural gesture. But the court faction around Ptolemy the 13th is gaining ground by 48 BC. 3 years into her reign, Cleopatra is forced out of Alexandria. She retreats to the eastern border of Egypt and begins raising an army. Her brother's forces hold the rest of the country. Civil war is imminent. And then something happens that changes everything. Something arrives on Egypt's northern coast that neither Cleopatra nor her brother anticipated. Something that will determine the future of Egypt more than any domestic political struggle. The Roman Civil War has come to Egypt. Pompey, defeated by Caesar at the Battle of Pharsalus in Greece, is fleeing east. He believes Egypt, which his family has supported and which owes him political debts, will offer him refuge. He sends ahead asking permission to land. The advisors around Ptolemy the 13th make their calculation. Pompey is a defeated man. Caesar is clearly winning the Roman Civil War. Sheltering Pompey will anger Caesar. They send a small boat to meet Pompey's ship. Pompey steps into the boat. He is stabbed before he reaches the shore. His head is cut off and preserved. 3 days later, Julius Caesar arrives in Alexandria. Rest now. The harbor is quiet tonight. The queen is camped on the border with an army she cannot use yet. A Roman general is sailing toward a city that has just made a very calculated decision. Everything is about to change. Good night. Good night.
Caesar arrives in Alexandria and is presented. With Pompey's head, he weeps, whether from genuine grief, political calculation, or both is impossible to know. He installs himself in the royal palace and summons both Ptolemy the 13th and Cleopatra to appear before him as arbitrator of their dispute. Ptolemy's forces control the approaches to Alexandria. Cleopatra cannot enter the city without being arrested or killed. She needs to reach Caesar. She needs to do it without being stopped. and she needs to make an impression on a man who has met queens and generals and the most powerful people in the world. She arranges to be smuggled into the palace wrapped in a bundle of bedding. Some ancient sources say a carpet, others say a linen sack. The precise object varies depending on which account you follow. What the sources agree on is that she arrives at Caesar's feet, is unrolled in front of him, and that the effect is immediate. She is 21 years old, Caesar is 52. What happens between them in the following hours is not recorded in detail by any ancient source present in the room. What is recorded is that by morning they are allies, and within days they are lovers. It is tempting to reduce this to a romantic story. It is also misleading Cleopatra as a political actor of the first order. Making a calculated decision, Caesar is the most powerful man in the Roman world, and she needs his support to regain her throne. Caesar is also making a calculation. Egypt is the richest country in the Mediterranean. Keeping it stable and friendly to Rome under a ruler he controls is strategically valuable. Both of these things can be true alongside genuine personal connection, ancient sources that are neither particularly friendly to Cleopatra nor particularly romantic in their orientation describe something that goes beyond pure political calculation on both sides. Caesar presents himself as arbitrator between the siblings and announces that they must rule jointly as their fathers will specify. The court faction around Ptolemy XIII is not satisfied. They have an army, and they intend to use it. The Alexandrian War begins. Caesar is besieged in the palace district with a small force while waiting for reinforcements. At one point he sets fire to ships in the harbor to prevent their capture by the Egyptian forces. The fire spreads to the shore and destroys buildings near the Great Library. The extent of damage to the library itself is debated by historians. Some sources suggest the damage is severe, others suggest it is exaggerated. What is certain is that fire reaches the waterfront. Reinforcements arrive from the east. The forces loyal to Ptolemy XIII are defeated. Ptolemy himself flees and drowns in the Nile. Cleopatra is restored to her throne. She sails up the Nile with Caesar on a great royal barge, a journey of weeks, showing the Roman the ancient country. She rules the temples, the monuments, the scale of the Nile's annual flood, and the agriculture it supports. It is both a personal journey and a political display. This is Egypt. This is what Rome is dealing with. This is what I command. Rest now. The Nile is dark and slow tonight. On a royal barge, two people are talking about empires. Good night. Good night. '47 BC, Caesar leaves Egypt. He has campaigns to fight. There are Roman forces to deal with in Asia Minor, in Africa, in Spain. The civil war against Pompey's allies is not yet finished. He cannot stay in Alexandria, however much he might wish to. He leaves Egypt in the hands of Cleopatra and a Roman garrison. He also leaves something else. Cleopatra is pregnant. She gives birth to a son whom she names Caesarion, Little Caesar. She claims publicly that Caesar is the father. Caesar never formally acknowledges the child. Under Roman law, Caesar could not have a legitimate child with a foreign woman. But he does not deny the claim either. He allows it to exist in the complicated space between acknowledgement and denial. Cleopatra rules Egypt alone now, with a younger brother nominally as co-ruler in the Ptolemaic tradition. But with real power firmly in her hands, she is an effective administrator. Egypt under her rule is prosperous, the agricultural system that feeds much of the Mediterranean world functions, trade flows through Alexandria's harbor, the currency is managed carefully. In 46 BC, Caesar invites Cleopatra to Rome. She comes with Caesarion and a large entourage. She stays in Caesar's villa, across the Tiber, outside the formal boundaries of the city. Her presence in Rome is politically controversial. Caesar is already being accused of wanting to be king. Having an Egyptian queen openly installed in his villa does nothing to quiet these accusations. Caesar places a gold statue of Cleopatra in the temple of Venus Genitrix in his new forum. Venus is the goddess from whom the Julian family claims descent, placing Cleopatra there presents her as divine, as a goddess in the Roman religious system. It is a remarkable and deliberate statement. Roman opinion is not comfortable with it. Cleopatra watches Roman politics from her villa across the river. She sees the tensions building around Caesar, the accusations of tyranny, the concern of senators about his accumulation of power, the growing number of men who believe he must be stopped. Whether she warns him or tries to change his behavior is not recorded. On the Ides of March 44 BC, Julius Caesar is assassinated in the theater of Pompeii. 23 stab wounds, he dies at the foot of a statue of Pompey. Cleopatra is in Rome when it happens. She waits to see how the situation develops. It develops quickly and badly. The conspirators expected the Senate to rally. To them instead, Mark Antony's funeral speech turns the Roman crowd against them. The conspirators flee, violence spreads. Cleopatra waits a few more weeks, then she sails back to Egypt. She takes Caesarion. With her, the Roman alliance she has built through Caesar is gone. She must build a new one, or find a way to survive without one, or find a new Roman. She arrives in Alexandria and moves quickly. Her younger brother, the nominal co-ruler, dies shortly after her return. The sources are vague about the circumstances. Cleopatra rules alone. Rest now. Alexandria is quiet tonight. The queen is watching the news from Rome and calculating what comes next. Good night. The world after Caesar's death is uncertain and dangerous. Three factions compete for power in Rome. The conspirators Brutus and Cassius, who control significant armies. In the east, Mark Antony, Caesar's most powerful ally, and the sitting consul, who moves quickly to take control of the situation in Rome. And a young man of 18 named Gaius Octavius, who arrives from his studies in Greece, carrying the news that Caesar's will has named him as his adopted son and primary heir. Cleopatra watches all of this from Egypt. She has resources that every faction needs. Egypt's grain feeds Rome. Egypt's treasury is the richest in the eastern Mediterranean. Whoever controls Egypt or commands its queen's support has an enormous advantage in the contest for power. The conspirators Brutus and Cassius control the eastern provinces and are raising forces. They request Egyptian support. Cleopatra delays. She sends some assistance, but carefully, without fully committing to their cause. She is buying time while she assesses which side will win. In 43 BC, Antony, Octavian, and a general named Lepidus form the Second Triumvirate. They divide the Roman world between them and immediately begin hunting Caesar's killers. Proscription lists are posted, hundreds of their political enemies are killed, including the great orator Cicero, whose head and hands are nailed to the speaker's platform in the Roman Forum. In 42 BC, at the Battle of Philippi, in northern Greece, the Triumvirate's forces defeat Brutus and Cassius. Both men take their own lives rather than be captured. The conspirators who killed Caesar are gone. The Triumvirate then divides the Roman world between them. Octavian takes the west, Lepidus takes Africa, Antony takes the east, the wealthiest and most strategically important part of the Roman world. His territory includes the kingdoms that border Egypt. His relationship with Cleopatra becomes a matter of enormous political importance. During the Civil War, Cleopatra had provided some assistance to the Triumvirate's forces. She is now summoned by Antony to explain her conduct during the conflict, specifically why her support for his cause had not been more wholehearted. The summons goes to Tarsus in what is today southern Turkey. She is to appear before him and account for herself. Cleopatra takes her time in responding. She does not rush to answer a summons. When she finally goes to Tarsus, she does not arrive as a suppliant. She arrives as a queen. Rest now. The Eastern Mediterranean is watching it. Queen is preparing for a meeting that will determine the future of Egypt and the Eastern Roman world. Good night. Good night.
'41 BC Tarsus, a prosperous city on the southern coast of what is today Turkey. Mark Antony is here conducting the business of the eastern provinces, meeting local rulers and client kings, establishing his authority over the wealthiest part of the Roman world. He has sent for Cleopatra. She has taken weeks to respond. When she finally comes, she does not arrive quietly. The ancient historian Plutarch, writing more than a century later, but drawing on earlier sources, describes what happens on the river Cydnus as Cleopatra approaches. The city, his account is so vivid that Shakespeare will use it almost word for word in his play about Antony and Cleopatra. Her barge has a gilded stern and purple sails. Silver oars beat the water to the sound of flutes and harps. Cleopatra reclines under a canopy of gold cloth, dressed as Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Her attendants are dressed as sea nymphs, and Grace's perfumes drift to the shore. The people of Tarsus pour out of the city to watch. Antony is left waiting in the marketplace, practically alone. This is not a romantic gesture. It is a political performance of extraordinary sophistication. Cleopatra is presenting herself as a goddess, as a figure of divine power, not as a ruler who has come to explain herself to a Roman general. She is inverting the power dynamic of the summons Antony sent for her. She has arrived on her own terms. Antony sends an invitation for her to dine with him. She declines and invites him to dine with her. Instead, he accepts. The dinner on her barge is described as extraordinarily lavish. She apologizes for the speed of the preparation, implying that with more time she could have done better. Whether Antony appreciates the joke or simply appreciates the spectacle is not recorded. What is recorded is that the meeting is a success. Mark Antony is 42 years old. He is physically imposing. A soldier who has fought alongside Caesar for years. He is generous, impulsive, fond of pleasure, and deeply capable of genuine loyalty. He is also politically less subtle than Caesar. He responds to things directly and emotionally rather than through the layered calculation that Caesar brought to everything. He is not simply seduced by Cleopatra. He recognizes, as Caesar did, that Egypt and Cleopatra are strategically essential to his ambitions in the East. He plans a campaign against the Parthians, Rome's great enemy in the East. The empire that killed Crassus. Egypt's wealth will fund it. Cleopatra's cooperation is not optional. But the personal connection is also real. Unlike the relationship with Caesar, which was always colored by the difference in their peaches and the hierarchy of Roman power, the relationship between Antony and Cleopatra seems more equal. Two powerful people who find each other genuinely compelling. Antony follows Cleopatra back to Alexandria. He spends the winter of 41 to 40 BC there. The accounts of this winter in Alexandria describe a life of extraordinary pleasure and entertainment, a society that called itself the Inimitable Livers, dedicated to living at the highest possible level of experience. Rest now, Alexandria is brilliant tonight. The harbor reflects 1,000 lights. Two people are deciding the fate of the Eastern world over a dinner table. Good night. Good night.
The winter in Alexandria ends. Antony must return to the business of the Roman world. Events in the West demand his attention. His wife Fulvia and his brother Lucius have launched a war against Octavian in Italy, while he has been in Alexandria. The war has failed. Fulvia is in retreat. The situation requires Antony to deal with Octavian directly before their partnership in the triumvirate collapses entirely. He leaves Alexandria. Cleopatra is pregnant. With his children, she gives birth to twins, a boy and a girl whom she names Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene. The sun and the moon. Antony does not see them for years. In Rome, Antony and Octavian negotiate the Treaty of Brundisium in 40 BC. Patches over their differences temporarily. As part of the settlement, Antony marries Octavian's sister Octavia. She is by all accounts an admirable woman, intelligent, dignified, and genuinely devoted to the difficult task of being Antony's wife, while managing the political relationship between the two most powerful men in the Roman world. For 3 years, Antony remains in the West. He is with Octavia. He is conducting the affairs of his half of the Roman world. He is preparing for the Parthian campaign that has been his strategic goal since taking the East. And he is not in Alexandria. In 37 BC, he returns to the East. To launch the Parthian campaign, he summons Cleopatra. To Antioch she comes. The relationship resumes. He formally recognizes their twins, and they have another son together, named Ptolemy Philadelphus. At Antioch, Antony makes a political decision that will be used against him in Rome. He provides Cleopatra with territorial gifts. Cyprus, already hers in practice, is confirmed parts of the Lebanese and Syrian coast, the balsam groves of Jericho, portions of Arabia. These are territories that have been under Roman control or Roman client rule, giving them to Cleopatra.
serves strategic purposes. Egypt needs timber for its fleet, and the Lebanese cedar forests are essential. The territories provide resources that will fund the Parthian campaign. But in Rome, the territorial gifts look different. They look like a Roman general giving Roman property to a foreign queen. Octavian's propaganda operation takes note. He begins building a picture of Antony as a man who has abandoned Rome and Roman values for an Eastern queen who has bewitched him. The Parthian campaign goes badly. The Parthians avoid pitched battle and destroy Antony's siege train. He retreats with serious losses. He retreats to Alexandria. He retreats to Cleopatra. Octavian's propagandists note this too. Rest now, the alliance between Egypt and Rome's Eastern master is deeper now than it has ever been. In the West, a young man with cold eyes is watching and planning. Good night. Good night.
'34 BC. Alexandria. Antony returns from a successful campaign in Armenia. He has captured the Armenian king and brought him back in golden chains. It is a genuine military achievement, and he celebrates it in the way Roman generals celebrate victories with a triumph, but not in Rome, in Alexandria. This is immediately controversial. A Roman triumph is a sacred ceremony. It belongs in Rome. It is processed through the streets of the city to the capital to hold one in Alexandria. In a foreign city, in the presence of an Egyptian queen, is either a bold innovation or a profound insult to Roman tradition. Depending on how you look at it, Octavian looks at it one way, Antony's supporters look at it another. After the triumph, Antony stages what becomes known as the Donations of Alexandria. In a great public ceremony in the Gymnasium of Alexandria, he distributes kingdoms to Cleopatra and her children. Cleopatra is declared queen of kings and ruler of Egypt, Cyprus, Libya, and the cold Syrian part of modern Lebanon and Syria. Caesarion, her son by Caesar, is declared co-ruler with her and legitimate son of Caesar. This last point is a direct challenge to Octavian, whose power rests on being Caesar's adopted heir. Antony and Cleopatra's children receive kingdoms. To Alexander, Helios is given, Armenia, Media, and the Parthian Empire, which has not yet been conquered, but which Antony intends to take. Cleopatra, Selene, receives Cyrenaica and Libya. Ptolemy, Philadelphus, just a toddler, is dressed in Macedonian costume and given Syria and Cilicia. The ceremony is theatrical and deliberate. It presents a vision of the East organized under the joint authority of Antony and Cleopatra, with their children ruling as a royal dynasty stretching from the Mediterranean to the borders of India. It is either a grand strategic vision for organizing the Eastern Roman world, or it is a declaration that Antony has abandoned Rome and gone native. In Rome, Octavian presents it as the latter. He reads Antony's will to the Roman Senate, having illegally obtained it from the Temple of the Vestal Virgins where it was stored. The will, if authentic and accurately described, says that Antony wishes to be buried in Alexandria beside Cleopatra. For Romans, this is shocking. A Roman citizen wishes to be buried in a foreign country beside a foreign queen, rather than in Rome. Octavian's propaganda is effective. He presents the coming conflict not as a Roman civil war,
which it essentially is, but as a war between Rome and the foreign East, between Roman values and Eastern corruption, between himself, the defender of everything Roman, and Cleopatra, the foreign seductress who has stolen a Roman general from his duty and his country. Antony is not entirely wrong to be angry about this characterization. His decisions about the East have strategic logic. Middle nations are defensible as a system for organizing client kingdoms. But Octavian has successfully made the coming war about Cleopatra, rather than about two Roman men fighting for supremacy. Rest now, Alexandria is celebrating tonight. In Rome, a different story is being told about this same celebration. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night. Good night.
Gaius Octavius, later known as Octavian. Later still as Augustus, he is perhaps the most consequential political figure in Roman history. And he is Cleopatra's ultimate opponent. Understanding him is essential to understanding what happens to her. He is born in 63 BC, the great nephew of Julius Caesar. When Caesar is assassinated, Octavian is 18 years old and studying. In Greece, he returns to Rome and announces that he intends to claim his inheritance. As Caesar's adopted son, everyone around him advises caution. He is young, physically, unimpressive, without military experience or political connections of his own. The advice is to wait. He does not wait. He moves with a speed and confidence that contradicts his inexperience and his slight frame. He is not a soldier in the way Caesar or Antony is a soldier. He does not lead from the front. He is frequently ill at crucial moments in military campaigns. But he has a quality that proves more valuable than physical courage in the long run. He is extraordinarily patient. He is willing to wait for exactly the right moment, and he never loses sight of his ultimate objective. Through the chaos of the years after Caesar's death, he maneuvers with exceptional skill. He forms the second triumvirate with Antony and Lepidus as a temporary alliance of necessity. He uses Antony's military strength to defeat the conspirators at Philippi. He gradually marginalizes Lepidus, confining him to a religious role and stripping him of his territorial command. He builds his power base in the West, in Italy, in the loyalty of Caesar's veterans and the urban population of Rome. His genius is understanding that in Rome, perception is power. He presents himself not as Caesar's avenger seeking personal power, but as the defender of the Republic, of Roman values and Roman tradition. Every action Antony takes in the East is filtered through Octavian's propaganda machine to confirm the narrative that Antony has abandoned Rome and been corrupted by Cleopatra. The formal break with Antony comes in 32 BC. Antony sends papers to Rome, divorcing Octavia. It is a political mistake of the first order. Octavia has been patient and dignified throughout the years of her difficult marriage. She has maintained her residence in Antony's house in Rome and managed his affairs there. By divorcing her, Antony gives Octavian a personal grievance to go alongside the political ones. Octavian has the Senate strip Antony of his powers and declare war, not on Antony, which would make it a civil war. On Cleopatra, the war is presented as Rome defending itself against a foreign enemy. It is a masterpiece of political framing.
Both sides prepare for the confrontation that everyone has known for years is coming. Antony and Cleopatra gather their forces. In Greece, Octavian prepares his fleet and army. In Italy, the decisive moment is approaching. Rest now. Two worlds are moving toward each other across the Mediterranean. The outcome will determine who rules Rome and what happens to Egypt. Good night.
Before the fleets meet at Actium, there is another war, a war of words and images and stories, a war fought in Rome's streets, in its theaters, in its political speeches, and in the whisper networks of the most gossipy city in the ancient world. It is a war aimed at a single target, Cleopatra, and it is largely one-sided. Octavian controls Rome, he controls the Senate, he controls the poets and the writers who depend on aristocratic patronage to survive. He controls the narrative. And the narrative he constructs about Cleopatra is one of the most effective character assassinations in the ancient world. So effective that it has shaped how she is understood for 2,000 years. The image of Cleopatra that Octavian's propaganda creates is consistent and detailed. She is a foreign seductress who has used sexuality to corrupt and control Roman men. She is ambitious beyond her station, dreaming of ruling Rome itself. She drinks and feasts to excess. She is cruel to her subjects. She is a threat to everything Roman and everything masculine in the Roman value system. Almost none of this is supported by the historical evidence that exists outside Roman propaganda sources. The accounts of Cleopatra from non-Roman sources, from Egyptian records, from authors writing later, who draw on a wider range of material, present a very different figure, an intelligent and effective ruler who speaks multiple languages, manages a complex economy, maintains Egypt's independence through political skill, and who forms genuine alliances rather than casting sexual spells. The sexuality that Roman propaganda focuses on says more about Roman anxieties than about Cleopatra's actual behavior. Rome is deeply uncomfortable with powerful women. A woman who rules independently, who chooses her own allies, who negotiates as an equal with the most powerful men in the world, violates Roman ideas about how women should behave. The simplest way to delegitimize her is to explain her power as sexual manipulation rather than political skill. The poets who write during and after Octavian's rise contribute to the picture. Horace describes her as a deadly monster, plotting the destruction of Rome. Propertius writes of a woman whose ambition knows no limits. These images enter the cultural bloodstream and persist. Later writers build on them. Medieval authors make her a symbol of dangerous female sexuality. Renaissance artists paint her as beautiful and tragic. Shakespeare gives her the most complex and sympathetic treatment. But even he works within the frame that Roman propaganda established. Cleopatra cannot respond effectively to this campaign. She is in Alexandria. She does not control Roman public opinion. She cannot write her own account. No document from her hand survives. We see her entirely through other people's eyes, most of them hostile or writing long after the fact. What we can do is look at what she actually achieved. A woman who rules one of the wealthiest countries in the world for 20 years, who keeps Egypt independent while Rome swallows every other Eastern kingdom,
who is the only member of her dynasty to speak Egyptian, who manages the complex politics of the late Roman Republic better than most Roman politicians. These are not the achievements of a woman whose primary skill is seduction. Rest now in Rome tonight. Someone is writing something unflattering about Cleopatra. In Alexandria, she is managing a country and waiting for what comes next. Good night. Good night.
'31 BC. The western coast of Greece, a promontory called Actium at the entrance to the Ambracian Gulf. Antony and Cleopatra have positioned their forces here. Their fleet is in the Gulf. Their land army is camped along the coast. Octavian's fleet, commanded by his brilliant admiral Marcus Agrippa, has been blockading them for months. The situation has been deteriorating for Antony and Cleopatra throughout the spring, and summer. Agrippa's ships have disrupted their supply lines. Disease has spread through the land army. Desertions are increasing. Senior commanders are defecting to Octavian, including the king of Galatia, who walks into Octavian's camp with 2,000 cavalry. Each defection brings intelligence about Antony's plans and weaknesses. Antony's advisors disagree about strategy. His land commanders want to abandon the ships and fight on land where they believe they have the advantage. Cleopatra argues for a naval engagement. She has 60 Egyptian warships in the Gulf, and she wants them used. She also, some sources suggest, has already decided that if the battle goes badly, she will take her fleet and escape to Egypt to fight from there. On the 2nd of September 31 BC, the fleet moves out of the Gulf to give battle. The ships carry their sails, which are not normally brought on a warship going into battle. This detail, noted by ancient sources, suggests that retreat was planned from the beginning, that Cleopatra at least intends to break through the enemy fleet and sail south, regardless of the outcome. The battle begins in the morning. Antony's larger ships and Agrippa's faster and more maneuverable fleet exchange fire across the water. The fighting is inconclusive through the middle of the day. Neither side achieves a decisive advantage. In the afternoon, the wind shifts. Cleopatra's Egyptian squadron raises its sails and breaks through the gap in the battle line. She heads south with her 60 ships and the Egyptian treasury aboard. Whether this is the agreed plan or a panicked flight is a question that the ancient sources, all of them writing after the fact with varying axes to grind, cannot definitively answer. Antony sees her go. He follows. He abandons his fleet and his army and transfers to a smaller ship to pursue Cleopatra. He catches up with her flagship, but does not board immediately. He sits in the prow of his ship for 3 days as the fleet sails south without speaking to anyone. The fleet and army he left behind fight for another week before surrendering to Octavian. Antony's abandonment of them is the end of his reputation and of any realistic path to victory. Actium is not a straightforwardly decisive naval battle. It is decisive because of what happens after it, because Antony leaves, because without Antony there is no leadership, no plan, no reason for his forces to continue within a year. Everything is finished. Rest now. The sea off Actium is quiet tonight.
The battle is over. The war is not yet finished, but its outcome is no longer in doubt. Good night. Good night.
"30 BC Egypt, after Actium, everything moves. Quickly Octavian consolidates his victory. In Greece and the East, former allies of Antony and Cleopatra fall over themselves to send embassies to the winner. The client kings who had supported them now support. Octavian, the political world has shifted, and everyone can see it. Antony and Cleopatra return to Alexandria. The situation is not immediately hopeless, but the trend is clear. They still control Egypt. They still have forces. Cleopatra has the treasury, but they are running out of time and running out of options. Cleopatra begins a series of diplomatic contacts with Octavian directly without Antony's knowledge. She is exploring whether a separate arrangement is possible, whether Egypt can survive, perhaps under her children, if she cooperates with the coming Roman power. She is a pragmatic ruler. She has always understood that Egypt's survival requires accommodation with Rome. She is looking for the terms of that accommodation. Octavian's responses are carefully crafted. He encourages her to believe that a reasonable arrangement is possible. He wants her to stay in Egypt rather than flee with the treasury to somewhere he cannot reach. He wants her alive and in Alexandria when he arrives, because a living Cleopatra who can be displayed in a triumph in Rome is worth more to him than a dead queen. Antony makes one final attempt at a military response. His remaining forces are sent to engage Octavian's advancing army. They defect. His fleet surrenders to Octavian in the harbor on the 1st of August. 30 BC, Octavian's forces enter Alexandria without significant resistance. Antony receives false news that Cleopatra is dead. The sources say he falls on his sword. He does not die immediately. He is brought to wherever Cleopatra is barricaded. Some sources say a tomb she has been constructing, and is pulled up through a window. He dies in her arms. He is 53 years old. Cleopatra is taken into custody. She is treated with formal respect. Octavian visits her, and the meeting is tense and careful. She is not well. She has wounds on her arms from beating herself in grief. Over Antony, Octavian assures her of his good intentions. She does not believe him. She knows what a Roman triumph means. She knows that as the centerpiece of Octavian's celebration in Rome, she will be displayed in chains, led through the streets of the city that has conquered her country. She has seen it done to others. She will not allow it to be done to her. Rest now. Alexandria is under new management. Tonight, in a room somewhere in the city, a queen is making her final decision. Good night. Good night. Let us pause here and sit with Antony for a moment, because his story, which is so entangled with Cleopatra's, deserves to be understood on its own terms before we reach the final days in Alexandria. Mark Antony is one of the most contradictory figures of the late Roman Republic. He is genuinely capable of extraordinary
generosity and extraordinary excess. At the same time, he inspires fierce loyalty in his soldiers, who follow him through situations that would break lesser men's armies. He is physically brave to the point of recklessness. He has genuine political vision for the East, a part of the Roman world that Rome's traditional ruling class understands poorly. He also makes decisions that are baffling in their self-destructiveness, leaving his army at Actium. The timing of the divorce from Octavia, the donations of Alexandria, which give Octavian so much propaganda material. Whether these decisions are evidence of poor judgment or of a man who has simply chosen a path and follows it regardless of consequences is a question without a clear answer. His relationship with Cleopatra is the most scrutinized of his life. Roman tradition explains it as bewitchment. Modern romanticization presents it as the great love story of the ancient world. The truth is probably more complicated than either two powerful people with aligned interests who also find each other compelling, a relationship that serves both of them politically, while also being personally genuine. When the false news reaches Antony that Cleopatra is dead, his response is immediate. He decides that there is nothing left to live for. He asks his servant Eros to kill him. Eros refuses and kills himself instead. Antony then falls on his own sword. He does not die immediately. A wound from a sword is not always quickly fatal. He lies wounded and asks those around him to finish the task. They do not. He is found and brought to wherever Cleopatra is being held, pulled up through a window, because she will not open the door and risk being taken by Octavian's soldiers. He dies in her presence. The ancient accounts of this moment vary, but they agree on the essential fact. He dies, holding her or near her. He is coherent enough at the end to urge her to make her own safety, rather than mourn him. And to drink wine, he dies as he has lived, with a kind of large and generous spirit that his many errors of judgment never entirely extinguished. Cleopatra mourns him. The wounds on her arms that Octavian notices when he visits her are evidence of how she expresses that grief in the Egyptian manner. Beating herself, she buries him with royal honors. The man who wanted to be buried in Alexandria beside her gets at least part of that wish. She is now alone, held by Octavian's guards, negotiating for her life and her children's futures and deciding, with the characteristic clarity of a woman who has always known what she wants and what she will not accept, what she is going to do next. Rest now, Alexandria is quiet and strange. Tonight, a great man has died in unusual circumstances, and a greater woman is deciding her own fate. Good night. Good night.
Octavian visits Cleopatra in her quarters. It is one of the most fascinating meetings in ancient history. Two of the most intelligent political actors of their age, each trying to read the other, each pursuing their own objectives, neither willing to show their hand completely. Cleopatra receives him lying on a simple bed. She is not well. The wounds on her arms are infected. She has been fasting. She looks nothing like the queen who arrived at Tarsus on a gilded barge, or perhaps she has calculated that appearing diminished and vulnerable is more useful to her now than appearing powerful.
She presents Octavian with a document she describes as a complete accounting of her personal wealth, her treasurer, standing nearby, immediately objects that it is incomplete, that she has hidden a portion. She turns on the treasurer furiously and strikes him. Then she appeals to Octavian. She has kept some things back, she admits, gifts for Octavia and Livia, Octavian's wife, to soften their hearts toward her. Surely, he can understand this. It is a performance scholars have debated for centuries whether it is a genuine attempt to manage the situation or whether she has already decided to die and is simply buying time and attempting to secure better treatment for her children. The fact that she is clearly concealing wealth suggests she is planning something. A dead person has no use for hidden funds. Octavian assures her that she will be treated well, that she has nothing to fear. But he intends to be generous. He says all the right things. He leaves. She reads him more accurately than he reads her. She discovers or is told that Octavian's plans include transporting her to Rome. Within days, the triumph is being organized. She is to be the centerpiece of it. This confirms what she has already suspected. His assurances are tactical. His actual intentions are what she knew they would be. She asked permission to perform funeral rites at Antony's tomb. It is granted. She goes to the tomb and performs the rites, pouring libations, placing flowers. She speaks to Antony's memory. She tells him that she will not be led in triumph, that she will not be displayed for Roman entertainment, that if there is any reunion, in whatever comes after death, she will be with him soon. She returns to her quarters. She bathes. She dresses in her royal robes. She eats a meal. She sends a letter to Octavian, asking to be buried beside Antony. Octavian reads the letter and understands immediately what it means. He sends men to prevent whatever is about to happen. They arrive too late. Rest now. The letter has been sent. The queen has made her decision. Nothing that comes after will change it. Good night. Good night.
August the 12th, 30 BC, Alexandria. Cleopatra is 39 years old. She has ruled Egypt for 21 years. She is the last independent ruler of Egypt. After her, Egypt becomes a Roman province. It will not be independent again for nearly 2,000 years. When Octavian's men enter her quarters, they find her dead. She is lying on her golden bed in her royal robes. Two of her attendants, Iras and Charmian, are also dead or dying. Charmian is still upright, adjusting the diadem on Cleopatra's head. When a guard asks angrily if this is well done, Charmian answers that it is well done and fitting for a queen, descended from so many kings. Then she falls. How Cleopatra dies is one of the enduring mysteries of the ancient world, the snake story. The ass brought to her in a basket of figs comes from ancient sources, including Plutarch. It is vivid and symbolically perfect. The cobra is a symbol of Egyptian royal power, worn on the pharaoh's crown. To die by the bite of Egypt's royal snake is to die as a pharaoh, not as a Roman captive. But ancient sources also record other possibilities.
A hollow hairpin used to introduce poison, a scratch on her arm from a sharp instrument dipped in venom. Octavian has specialists examine her body and cannot determine the method. If the snake is there, it has disappeared. No snake is found in the room. Modern medical analysis of the ancient accounts suggests that a cobra bite, which is neurotoxic and causes progressive paralysis, fits the description of her death better than some alternatives. But certainty is impossible after 2,000 years. What matters is that she chooses her death. She's not taken from Alexandria in chains. She's not displayed in Octavian's triumph. A triumph that Octavian eventually holds in Rome includes an effigy of Cleopatra, with a snake on her arm, rather than the queen herself. Even in death, she denies him the centerpiece he wanted. She is buried beside Antony. Her tomb has never been found, like Alexander's tomb in the same city. It has been lost to the changes of 2,000 years. Alexandria has been built and rebuilt many times. Much of the ancient city lies under the sea following geological changes and earthquakes over the centuries. Whether her tomb survives underwater, what was destroyed long ago, is unknown. Caesarion, her son by Caesar, is hunted down and killed by Octavian's order. He is 17 years old. Octavian is reported to have said that two Caesars are one too many. Her children by Antony are taken to Rome and raised by Octavian. Antony's former wife Cleopatra eventually marries the king of Mauritania and lives out her life in North Africa. The dynasty ends. Egypt becomes a Roman province. Octavian takes personal control of it rather than giving it to a senator, because Egypt's wealth is too great and too strategic to trust to anyone who might use it to build a rival power base. No senator is permitted to visit Egypt without imperial permission. Rest now, Alexandria is quiet and changed. Tonight, a dynasty of 300 years has ended in a single afternoon. The world that comes next will be Roman in a way the world before has not been. Good night. Good night.
Cleopatra died in 30 BC. 2,050 years have passed. And yet her name remains one of the most immediately recognized in human history. More films have been made about her than about almost any other figure from the ancient world. More novels, more plays, more operas. She has been portrayed by some of the most celebrated actresses of every generation. The image of her is everywhere, and almost none of it accurately reflects the historical person. This is perhaps the central fact of her legacy. She is the most famous woman of the ancient world and the least accurately remembered. The gap between the historical Cleopatra and the Cleopatra of popular imagination is wider than for almost any other figure of comparable fame. The historical Cleopatra is first and foremost a ruler. She governs Egypt for 21 years. She is the last of a dynasty that has ruled Egypt for 3 centuries. She keeps Egypt independent longer than any reasonable analysis of the geopolitical situation would have predicted. She does this through intelligence, political skill, languages, and the ability to read situations and people with exceptional accuracy. She speaks 9 languages at a time when most rulers of her background speak only
Greek, she is the first of her dynasty. To speak Egyptian, she presents herself to her Egyptian subjects as a genuine pharaoh, not as a Greek queen ruling a foreign country. She participates in Egyptian religious ceremonies. She appears in Egyptian dress. The Egyptian population responds to this. She has a level of popular legitimacy among her subjects that her predecessors lacked. Her political alliances with Caesar and then Antony are matters of state as much as personal connection. Egypt needs a Roman patron. Rome is the dominant power. She chooses her patrons carefully, plays the relationship skillfully, and extracts as much for Egypt as she possibly can. The territory she gains through Antony, the Lebanese cedar forests, Cyprus, parts of the Levant, are economically strategic for Egypt. The romantic image, the seductress whose power over men is primarily sexual, is a creation of Octavian's propaganda and the Roman literary tradition that follows it. It tells us a great deal about how Rome understood powerful women and very little about Cleopatra herself. What would a world look like in which Cleopatra and Antony had won at Actium, in which the Eastern vision of a Greco-Roman world centered partly on Alexandria had prevailed over Octavian's Roman-centered vision? It is an interesting question. The Hellenistic world that Cleopatra represented was genuinely cosmopolitan. Multiple languages, multiple religious traditions, multiple cultures operating within a single political framework. What Octavian creates is more homogeneous, more Roman-centered. We cannot know the answer. History went the way it went. Octavian became Augustus. Rome became an empire. Egypt became a province. Cleopatra died in her royal robes, refusing to be displayed as a trophy. She is buried somewhere in Alexandria, beside the man she chose to be with in death as in life. The tomb has never been found. She remains, even in death, slightly out of reach, present everywhere in culture and art and imagination, located precisely nowhere. Cleopatra, the seventh born, 69 BC, died 30 BC, queen of Egypt for 21 years. Last of the Ptolemaic dynasty, last independent ruler of Egypt before the modern era. She was here. She changed things. She refused to be erased, even at the end, even when everything was lost. Sleep now. The story is complete. Good night. Good night.